Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Films and Stuff podcast. I'm Ethan, joined, as always, by Pete. Hey, Pete, what's up today?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Everything is great. Everything is gold-plated because, spoiler alert, we're talking about the Academy Awards, colloquially known as the Oscars. Before we begin, maybe I can just give you a few little trivias about the Academy Award.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
So there are 24 categories in film, not to be confused with the Golden Globes, which have 27 categories in both film and television.
That's total, right?
That's total. As you know, the Academy Awards are voted on by the members of the Academy. I think that there are currently slightly over 10,000. I think it's like 10,500, 10,700. And those members are divided in different branches. So for example, there's only like 1,300 actors who are members of the Academy. So they're only like 14% of the voting, compared to the Golden Globes, which only have 300 entertainment journalists who are voting. Mm-hmm. So even though they usually say the Golden Globes, which take place in January, kind of like a barometer for the Oscars, which take place in like March, April, there are some differences in terms of the voting. Historically, when you got an Academy Award back in the good old days, and I mean like in probably up to like the 1950s, you own that little bronze, it's not bronze, it's bronze plated in gold statue. And now you actually do not own the statue. You have to sell it back to the Academy for $1 rather than put it on eBay, sell it to someone else, blah, 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 because they did not like them changing hands. So if you do buy a Oscar on eBay, make sure it's a very, very old one, because if it's kind of like newer than the 1950s when they implemented this policy, it is either a knockoff or it is inappropriately being sold. And if the Academy finds out about it, they will give you $1 and demand it back. How's that for trivia, my friend?
Very cool.
Yep. So we decided to have this Academy Award centric episode of Films and Stuff because the nominations have been announced. And as always, there's a lot of not surprises. There are some small surprises. There are some big surprises, and there are some outrage going on, right?
Yeah.
So anything in particular caught your attention that you feel was a miscarriage of justice or blatantly unfair in terms of the nominations?
So I am of the mindset that I think to call an omission of what is obviously a very subjective decision, right? Because art is very subjective. I think to call an omission of one person's nomination, I think it's a little hard to call, to be outraged by that. I also think that, this is like the epitome of what would be colloquially called a first world problem, right?
Yeah.
There are a couple of surprising, let's say, omissions, but I don't think that they should warrant any kind of light the torches, grab the pitchforks and storm the Academy. I just think that's a little inappropriate.
I mean, we're also talking about the nominations, right? So, I mean, we're not talking about the winners. We're talking about the nominations. And therefore, I think it's a little bit difficult to really be outraged or say that there was an injustice for not having someone be nominated, right?
Yeah. And again, the fact that somebody else gets nominated over another person, you don't want to take that away from the person who did get nominated, because generally speaking, It's not like they're saying we're not going to nominate Leonardo DiCaprio because we're nominating Pete and Ethan, right? Two nobodies. They're nominating someone who's equivalently good at the craft. So you don't want to take that away from the other person either. One caveat, we're only going to be talking about the nominations that, again, this is going to sound really rude.
That matter.
But yeah, we're really talking about the main nominations. We're talking about Best Picture, Best Director, and the 4 acting nominations. Soundtrack is very important. Editing is maybe even more important. All of these things are important, and all of these different aspects have to work together to make an excellent movie. But I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of pocket here when I say that the most prestigious awards generally are the individual awards in the acting categories, the directing categories, and then the best overall picture.
I think you're right about that. The one thing that I noticed was that, a lot of times when you conceptualize or are filming a movie, you're kind of aiming for an Academy nomination or win, right? And you kind of know, like, taking a role like this is kind of like the fast track to getting that. When you look at like the 10 films nominated for Best Picture, I'm not intimately familiar with all of them. For example, like Zone of Interest, Poor Things,
Anatomy
Past Lives. Yeah. But they all kind of seemed worthy. And it seems like when they were being created, they all maybe had like a little bit of an inkling or an aim to be nominated. The one omission, the one film that I think everybody kind of like joined up on and thought, this is going to be nominated, but it wasn't, is Napoleon.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Before we get into that, let's talk about what were the actual nominees, right? So Best Picture, again, a couple years ago, generally speaking, there are only 5 entrants in any given category, but they expanded Best Picture because, I mean, frankly speaking, the movies are just getting better and better, and it gets harder and harder to cut it off at 5 movies. So this year, and again, in no particular order, you've got American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. Those are the 10 movies that were nominated.
It seems like alphabetical order, but I understand.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you know what? In very particular order, these are the 10 movies.
In no particular alphabetical order.
Touché.
We mean by quality or by preference, objectively. Okay. So which of those, one by one, which ones are you? I've seen, a little bit embarrassed to say, only 3 of those. Maybe I'm not embarrassed to say. I saw Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer.
I've seen 6 of these movies.
Whoa.
And I think you raise a very, very valuable point. So
thank you.
What was it? That there are, every year, there's a couple of movies. As you rightly said, most people are making movies with the intent that, hey, we want to make the best product ever. And hopefully it's good enough to win an Academy Award.
Yeah.
But I also get the feeling that there are a couple of years where there are movies that come out where the editors and the writers and the directors and the actors kind of say, hey, look, let's try to make a movie and again, this is very cynical. And this is not what I mean when I say game the system, but let's try to stack the deck in our favor to make a movie that's what we would colloquially be called Oscar bait.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Again, this is not a slam, but like, for example, last year, the movie that I would say came closest to being an Oscar bait type of movie was something like The Fabelmans. And again, I saw The Fabelmans. I thought it was a very good movie. Do I think it was the best movie of the year? Or should it have been nominated? I personally don't think so, because it's one of those movies which is, hey, look, it's a movie set in the past. It's about the history of cinema. It's about the love of cinema and the love of movie making. All the kind of touch points that you think the Academy is really going to go for. And I'm
I mean,
not
it's
saying that's what it was going for. I'm not saying that, Spielberg and all these guys got together and said, hey, listen, we're going to craft a movie which is going to touch the heartstrings of the Academy. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not that cynical. But there are times where you're just like, it just seems like it was almost engineered to get a nomination.
I don't think you should shy away from it so much. And I also don't think you need to be cynical to say it. I mean, I think it's just like anything. Things are going to be judged, and there's known criteria, whether they're right or wrong criteria. But I mean, you'd be stupid as a filmmaker to disregard what are some markers, for having your film be critically recognized, right?
Yeah.
The same probably with like, the one that always comes to mind that I think of Oscar bait was kind of like Revenant. Remember that was a few years ago with like Leonardo DiCaprio, which is look, it's time to, and you see it kind of a lot. You got to get like a little bit ugly. You have to like get a beard, be fat, be skinny, some type of like body transformation, right? That's a good marker.
Oh yeah.
You've got to be in very, very difficult like environmental circumstances, right? Like all of these things are well known, like Oppenheimer, the way that, Robert Downey's scenes were filmed in black and white.
Yeah.
These are all kind of like markers, and it doesn't mean that you don't care about your film. It's just that you'd be silly to like blow past these things and not take a little bit of heed to something that can give you some critical acclaim. But I agree, there are some baity things that you can do to kind of get on here. And that's why I would have expected that day one, when everyone got together for Napoleon, I know there's not really a day one, but like everyone probably when they joined was like, this is Oscar bait.
Yeah.
We've got Joaquin Phoenix, right? He's kind of a little bit of a darling. It's a historical movie. We're all going to wear costumes. It's going to be so intense and powerful. And that movie for me just kind of like bombed. Not nominated, except I think for costume design.
But I totally agree with you. And I think this year is relatively emblematic of the point you're making, which is we are above average consumers of the entertainment industry. And this is not us, trying to brag. It's just that's the fact. Yeah. And when we have only seen or actively sought out 3 or maybe 5 of the 10 best nominated movies, that says something to me, right? And Anatomy of a Fall, I did not see. I heard only good things. Past Lives, I did not see. I heard only good things. Holdovers, I did not see. I heard only good things. Zone of Interest, all these movies, highly critically acclaimed. But there is something to also being commercially successful.
Let's address the pink elephant in the room. Is Barbie really
that's the other thing.
Best Picture? I
don't think so. And I think that a lot of that probably comes down to look, any way you cut this conversation with Barbie, the problem is that anyone who's critical of Barbie in any way, shape, or form, the conversation quickly devolves into one of misogyny or sexism or feminism. And I'm kind of over it. And frankly speaking, I'll just be open and honest. Do I think this is one of the 10 best movies of the year? No. Did I enjoy the movie and think it was a good movie? Sure. Do I think it's worthy of being nominated as the best picture? Absolutely not. Are there some incredibly important messages in that movie for women and men alike? Certainly. Does that on its own qualify it to be a best movie picture? I don't think so.
It's really interesting because I think then if I compare Barbie to Killers of a Flower Moon, both of which I saw, Killers of a Flower Moon I thought was exceptionally drab and boring and not at all entertaining.
Right.
But I can see how just from a cinematic acclaim perspective, the cast was exceptional. The settings and the set and the depiction of everything was exceptional. I could see that would be a critically acclaimed movie, even though from an entertainment perspective, I thought it was a real snoozer.
Yeah.
Whereas I thought that Barbie, which was by all accounts very entertaining, there was funny stuff, there was a message, visually it was like light and enjoyable. But I don't think that from a technical or acclaim perspective, there was anything particularly interesting about that movie. It just
look,
didn't
set
really
design was fantastic, and I'm sure that again on a technical basis,
Yeah.
it was very difficult and it was very
Yeah.
impressive to do that. But I mean, if you're going to look at just that, I thought Asteroid City was a far more impressive movie on a technical, we've made an unbelievable set basis.
Oh yeah.
And that didn't get nominated for best
Yeah.
movie. I'm not saying it was worthy or
wow.
not worthy, but if you're just looking at it on that basis,
I agree. Asteroid City was actually quite fantastic. You're right.
right? And they built a beautiful town and set for it.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
saying that Barbie was nominated purely
No.
for that, but
Well, if it would have been nominated, then it would have been nominated for visual effects, which it was not, or it would have been nominated for production design. I don't know if it was or not.
I think this could be an example of the Academy also maybe overreacting or overcorrecting, because I will say one thing, the Academy has previously also chosen movies that are almost so esoteric or so art house that they're not
Yeah.
relatable to the common person. And so kudos to
Yeah.
the Academy. I would suggest that some of these movies are far more relatable, right? They
Yeah.
are movies that people will have seen. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true for all of them. Fine, but like, do I think in the past Barbie would have been nominated? I don't think so. So the fact that it is
No.
nominated, it's surprising because I don't think it should be nominated. But on the other hand, I think it's nice that a commercially successful movie also gets nominated, because you can't take that away from Barbie. Barbie was the most commercially successful film of 2023, bar none.
Yep. Did you see Maestro with Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan?
I did see bits and pieces of it. In fact, I think I finished it. I can't remember because I saw it on Netflix.
What was your view?
Again, one of those biopics that I didn't think I'd be interested in seeing, but when you watch it, you're just like, oh, it's really good. I did enjoy it. I thought Bradley Cooper did a fabulous job. I thought he was very, very good.
Under visual effects, it was interesting that we saw like a very diverse group, right? We saw the creator,
Yeah,
Godzilla,
yeah,
Guardians of the Galaxy 3,
yeah.
Mission Impossible, and Napoleon. Like, those are much different films than you've seen in any of the other categories, right?
Yeah, they are. But at the same time, all of them had incredible visual effects. In fact, if you haven't,
what was the Mission Impossible effects?
Probably the train sequence.
Oh, that was fantastic.
I would recommend, if you haven't seen this, and if our listeners haven't, I really think it's one of the most wholesome things I've ever seen. The people who made Godzilla, so Godzilla Minus One had a total budget of only $15 million.
Oh, really?
Yeah, next to nothing. And they stayed up to watch the nominations, the visual effects team, and they filmed themselves watching it in anticipation of getting nominated. It's one of the most wholesome videos you'll ever see. Like this group of Japanese filmmakers and editors and visual effects experts sitting in like this small, cramped boardroom or conference room, actively watching this like Zoom or like live stream of the awards nomination. And as soon as their name was mentioned, the entire team just goes ape shit. They pop off like these little poppers and streamers. It was so good. Like just for that, I want to see them win.
Oh, okay.
It was
That's
so
cool.
nice. I urge you to watch it on YouTube when you get a chance.
I shall. I was just gonna say, so they released the nominations now. The awards are actually handed out. Is it the end of March?
It's 11th of March.
So I mean, there's quite a span, right? Does that give like everyone from the Academy time to like watch them?
Watch and vote.
Hmm.
And then it gives everyone time to like all the different awards nominees to kind of gear up for their PR campaigns, right? Like they'll all go on the late night talk show hosts. They'll talk to podcasts. You know, the studios are going to spend a ton of money on advertising and newspapers and kind of get people up there. I'm almost certain that Oppenheimer's going to get re-released in the cinema. You know, like a bunch of these movies are going to get re-released in mainstream cinemas and just kind of be like, here's the last minute push, not just to bump up the PR and hype machine, but also get a few extra bucks in for each movie.
Yeah. Do you have any predictions?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say is, of these 10, who do you think is going to win it?
Again, not having seen them all, I guess if I were going to Las Vegas and I were putting money down, I would put money on Oppenheimer. Having seen Oppenheimer, I mean, it's hard to find any technical flaws with that. But I have to say, to me, part of being a best picture means you also have to have some entertainment value. And like if you called and said like, hey, Ethan, let's go see Oppenheimer again tonight, I'd be like, no, thanks.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I would not.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that's damning or it's a death knell, but something to me says like the best picture should be something that you want to see again. And even though the sound was great and the acting was great and the visuals were great and great and great and great and great and great, we know Nolan's amazing. Like it was just, I don't know. It was like music with like no soul, right?
How many times did you end up watching the movie?
I saw Oppenheimer once.
Interesting. I saw it 3 times.
What?
Yeah.
How did you see? That's 9 hours out of your life. How did you do that?
Isn't that crazy? I saw it 3 times. I really enjoyed it.
Huh.
So between the two of us, we averaged 2 times.
I mean, yeah, that's true, but wow, I have to say, you thought it was that good, huh?
I saw it twice in the cinema. That's the shocker. I saw it in the cinema twice, and then I saw it at home once.
So I guess that's your vote then for Best Picture.
Yeah, I think it's Oppenheimer's to lose at this stage. Again, based also on the fact that, you know, of all the movies that I did see, I don't just think it's the best. It's the one movie that if you told me, hey, we have to watch all of these again one more time, I think Oppenheimer's the only one I'd be looking forward to watching for the 4th time. Maybe Poor Things. I also like Poor Things.
I would, if I had to see, no offense, I definitely will not see Anatomy of a Fall. I will not see Poor Things. I will not see Zone of Interest. I could maybe be convinced to see Past Lives. I'm not keen to see Maestro, but that may be ignorance, and I could probably be convinced. And The Holdovers, having watched the trailer, I don't really feel like there's a whole lot of value in that for me. So I guess that's kind of where I stand. But I could be convinced to watch Maestro if someone said like, oh, it's better than you think.
So what do you think is going to win it?
Like I said, I think my money has to be on Oppenheimer. It's got the best brand recognition. I think everyone can plausibly vote for that. I mean, I think it would be hard to vote for Barbie. And I think that if you vote for Oppenheimer, you can also say, look, we're really in it for the art. They don't need to take something esoteric and weird like Poor Things or Past Lives. They could still have like some credibility by voting for Oppenheimer, I think.
I mean, it's, again, very bad way to look at it, but I think one of the things I would look at is like, would I feel almost embarrassed to vote for Barbie? I think I would.
Yeah. What's going to stand the test of time, right? I mean, when you look back in a few years, it's like Oppenheimer won an Academy Award. No one's going to be like, oh man, what were we thinking, right?
Yeah. It would be it wouldn't be a controversial win.
Yeah. Right. If you would say like, let's just say Poor Things, for example, which by all accounts is actually quite decent. I mean, that's kind of something where like I feel like you'd be like, what won in 2020? I can't remember. Like, what was it? Poor Things? What was that about? Like, it feels too small and niche, to get the Best Picture award.
You're right. Except for the fact that it stars some unbelievable actors, it does have the feel of an independent movie.
Yeah. It almost seems too small and like insignificant,
Which again, it's not. But yes, I totally understand your point. You know what? Since we're talking about movies, let's talk about the directors.
Yeah.
So the 5 nominees are Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things. Forgive me if I'm butchering the name. Nolan for Oppenheimer, Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, and Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall.
Again, money has to be on Nolan for Oppenheimer. I would expect, though, that for the director, this is where they'd go with someone like a little bit more. It just seems so easy to do Nolan or Scorsese, right? Okay. And I feel like the Academy will maybe say, Oppenheimer gets Best Picture. We can't give it to Nolan. Like, Scorsese's so well acclaimed. This is maybe where they decide that, someone else kind of pulls at their heartstrings or has a great story, or, they decide to expand the awards a little bit and give it to someone else. This is where I would expect that to happen rather than Best Picture.
Okay. I think it's going to be Nolan. All those other movies are very good, but I think that for him to pull off not just a biopic, but one of a very significant historical period in the way that he did, I think it's him. I think he's going to win.
My question is, irrespective of how he does, what is next for him? What is next for him? I mean, because selfishly, I want him to go back to The Dark Knight, Interstellar. Like, those are films that I love. Inception. I want him to go back to stuff like that because I love those so much, and he's so creative when it comes to things like that. I don't want him to become kind of the next Steven Spielberg, picking another very esoteric historical figure and doing this another like 3-hour biopic.
Okay.
Purely selfish.
I don't know what the next movie is, but there have been a lot of long-running rumors of him helming the next James Bond movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's happening or not happening. I have no idea, but that's the only thing that I've heard. Yeah. I honestly don't know, but I agree with you in the sense that I think Nolan is at his best when he gets to flex his pseudo sci-fi muscles.
Yeah.
I still think of Memento as one of the best movies he's done.
Yeah. There is a career arc, and me not being in this industry, I guess it's easy for me to be selfish and to point fingers, but I miss Matthew McConaughey in rom-coms. Yeah. I miss Bradley Cooper in Hangover. I miss these guys. Like, they're my friends, and they've kind of like got married and started a family, and now they're like just so serious and drab, and they're just chasing hardware. I miss them, right? Yeah. And I don't want to say I miss Nolan in Interstellar and Tenet and all the other, great things. I don't want him to just do another biopic about a scientist that I've never heard about or something like that.
I know exactly what you mean. I also get the feeling, though, that Nolan isn't the type to go chasing after hardware.
No, he's definitely got his own things that fascinate him, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think he just does the things that he does because that's what's interesting. Yeah. And I think, fair enough. The guy's got such a great career, and he's done so many good movies that I think he can basically go to any studio and just say, hey, listen, I want to make a 4-hour movie about paint drying, and I bet you people would be lining up around the block to fund him.
Look, James Bond would be that Bond franchise after Daniel Craig steps aside. I think it would be a good opportunity to kind of like revitalize that Bond franchise. Even the existing stuff with Craig has gotten a little bit redundant. Like if there's, I don't know when the next one is coming out, but I feel like I've already seen it. What were the last three? Spectre and...
that's the crazy thing. I almost said Ghost Protocol, but that was a Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah, but they've all kind of been the same, where Craig has done a lot for Bond to modernize Bond, but I feel like that story has kind of been like copy and pasted a few times, where he's always been kind of like the wayward, abandoned orphan son, right? Trying to kind of chase down his family roots with this big non-governmental organization that's out to kind of like destroy and or rule the world. And I just felt like that story has been told again. So when there's another Bond out, we've seen this. I'll definitely go see it, but I'll feel like I have already pre-seen it.
I want the next Bond iteration, whoever the next Bond is going to be, I want them to kind of say, hey, you know what? We don't need to see any more of Bond's backstory. We don't need to see any more of his trauma and childhood. Let's just focus on making this a Mission Impossible style movie where it's about a man on a mission. And that's it.
That's right. Yeah. That's actually, it should be more Mission Impossible, where it's just him kind of running around.
Here's the objective. Here's the bad guy. These are the insurmountable odds that you have to go and overcome. That's what I want. I don't need any more emotional distress. I don't need him to be like, I'm going to sleep with this woman and then not talk to her for a year because I have trust issues. I don't need any more of that.
I agree. I mean, in a way, I think the Fast and Furious has done this to us, where it's time to roll back the story, that not every story needs to be about the ticking clock, end of the world, taking over everything. Like, it can just be like, hey, there's an arms deal going down in Africa.
Yeah.
We need you to like break up the arms deal, right? There's a cocaine shipment. I mean, you are an MI agent. Or whatever, right? Like, you don't need to save the world every single time. Like, you can just stick in your own backyard. This is the mission. It's going to get gritty. Like, just solve the thing,
make it like a little bit like Captain America in the second movie, right? Where he's jumps off a plane, he stops an illegal arms shipment, he fights some bad guys, and then you can have that lead into a greater plot, but then have that plot end in that movie. I don't want it to be an interconnected series of movies again. Those are great, don't get me wrong. But when one of those movies gets derailed, which is what happened with the James Bond franchise, it ruins the entire franchise.
Look, there is something great. This is a very old reference. Charlie Sheen in Navy SEALs. Right. Where if you remember the opening scene was, hey, go in and you have to like do this one small thing, right? And they went in and they were doing that small thing and they said, wait a second, these are like interballistic missiles. That's not a word. I just made it up. But the guy's like, hey, that's not the mission. We're Navy SEALs. We listen to our instructions. Our instruction is do this and leave. He said, okay, we do it and leave. Then they get back and they debrief and everyone's like, great job, great job. Oh, by the way, we saw these missiles. And then their bosses are like, what? You should have destroyed those missiles. Now we got to do another mission to get those missiles, right? And they're like, yeah, but we were just following. That's the type of James Bond, I feel like, plot where he's like, yep, I'm just following orders. I came across this thing. Not my job, right? I've got to get myself out alive. I've got to get this person out alive. And they come back and say, whoa, you uncovered something a little bit bigger. Now you got to go like kind of
pull on that thread. Yeah,
pull on that thread. Yeah. So that's something that I can probably get behind in the Bond franchise. And it wouldn't be bad if Nolan was, the driving force behind that. And then, of course, the second question is going to be, who in this new Bond franchise is going to be playing the titular character, James Bond? So much ink has been spilled on this. I'm not sure as though we really have like a betting favorite right now. And to be honest, I'm not sure that I really even have like a front runner that would prefer. Idris Elba has been mentioned among others. In any case, I digress from our James Bond diatribe. This was an Academy Award episode. Do we have more to say about the Academy Awards? I think the summary from the actors is, and this is more a media issue than a real issue, Ryan Gosling was nominated. Margot Robbie was not.
Yeah.
America Ferrera was nominated. Leonardo DiCaprio was not. Lily Gladstone, the first Native American nominee, was. And I think the big takeaway is you could probably talk about this for a long time, but I think ultimately everyone who is nominated was absolutely deserving. There's a lot of great actors out there. Some of them were not nominated, but it's really hard to say that like a dramatic injustice took place for any of these.
So in general, yes, I will push back to say that I am not 100% on board with America Ferrera getting nominated, because that means displacing someone like Julianne Moore, or maybe even, depending on how you view her, Natalie Portman in May, December. I think that America Ferrera may be, and again, this is highly cynical, I expect that she got nominated for that one monologue she has in the third act, which is fine. It's a very important message, and I fully agree with that message. Do I think that that one message is worthy of her getting an Oscar nomination? I don't think so, because I don't think she was so exemplary in the movie that she should get nominated. But that's a secondary point, I suppose.
When you pointed it out, I caught the same thing, and I have to say, I'm not even entirely sure what her role was in that movie, and maybe that says something about the amount of attention. But I mean, I guess any year you're going to find some things to quibble about, but I mean, maybe she was unnecessarily nominated, but again, I don't think there's any major misjustices carried out here.
You're right. I think in the best actor and best actress as leads, I think it's Cillian Murphy's to win. I think it's Lily Gladstone's to win. I think in terms of optics, and I think in terms of story, both of them have the best stories for the wins if they get them.
Yep.
I think that for supporting actor, I think it's going to be Mark Ruffalo. I don't think it's going to be Ryan Gosling. I think it's a close race between Mark Ruffalo and Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
My gut tells me it's going to be Mark Ruffalo, just because it was a great performance and it was funny. Whereas I think Robert Downey Jr.'s was not funny at all. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be. I just get the feeling that they're going to give it to Poor Things because, again, I don't see Poor Things winning Best Movies or even Best Directors. I think they may throw the movie a bone by giving it Best Supporting Actor.
I mean, I always feel that it's very, I don't want to say easy, but it's easier to play a very rigid type character. And it's more complicated to play a character that has a few different personas, where you have to be funny and you have to be, confused or serious or, something else, arrogant, right? So I felt like Downey Jr. did a great job. It's so nice to see Iron Man doing something other than Iron Man.
Yeah.
But that was a good character that he played, but it wasn't like tremendously dynamic that you would say like, wow, like how did you pull that off? I mean, he was just a very serious, a little bit angry, individual who was cornered at the end.
Yeah, that's it. I don't think there are any other crazy surprises. I thought it was interesting. I am looking forward to seeing who wins. I don't know. I feel like this is the first year or one of the few Oscars in a long time where I've just kind of been, I don't want to say underwhelmed, but I think just whelmed. I think that all the nominations are as expected, very few shocks and surprises. And the few shocks and surprises we've seen, I think, are relatively well or easily explainable.
Yeah.
So, like, I would be shocked if all of a sudden they said Best Actor and they put Vin Diesel in there for Fast X. That would be like the only thing everyone in Hollywood would be talking about for like a month.
Yeah.
So which obviously wasn't going to happen, but can you imagine if that were the case?
Lifetime Achievement Award.
Also fine. So March 10th/11th, depending on your time zone, that's when we're going to see the 96th Oscars. We will have a breakdown for you.
We can do a breakdown after, see if there's anything that was consistent or dramatically outside of what we kind of predicted.
Exactly.
Well, my friend, that is another Academy Award themed episode of Films and Stuff. Pete, as you always do, tell our listeners where they can ping us, reach out to us, and otherwise watch this episode.
Absolutely. Look, let us know what you think about the Oscar nominations. Were there any shockers for you? Are there any locks or any predictions that you have? We'd love to hear it. We can always compare scorecards. You can tweet at us at F&S Podcast, DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast, email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. But as always, the easiest way to do that would be to leave a comment below this video, like and subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, all the usual YouTube stuff.
All the usual YouTube stuff.
And we will get back to you as soon as possible.
All right, listeners, thank you. Pete, thank you. And we will catch you all on the next episode of the Films and Stuff Podcast. Thanks, all.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.